Tell us about your experience advocating for public education in the past and your vision for the future. We'll start with Tyler.
Testing. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that question. My experience with our school system, I guess it's no secret that I was a public school teacher for the district. I taught special education. And in my time as a teacher, I have advocated for funding for our schools, working with our county commissioners, working with those in the legislative body, and also building with community allies to find ways to be innovative with our schools and to find various outlets that we can look at the gap and work with it. So I am prepared on day one, if elected, to hit the ground running and working with our county commissioners, our legislative bodies, to continue to work to make sure that we have a great public school system and continue to build. So thank you.
Okay, 1 second. This is new technology.
As I'm Michele Morrow, and I am a mom of 5, and so actually for the last 18 years, I've been advocating for each one of my children. My kids have been in everything from public to private, and also have been homeschooled. One of my children had an IEP and learning differences. One of my sons struggled with dysgraphia and dyslexia, and then on the other spectrum, I have a son who was gifted and talented. And so I have really been fighting in the school system for the best education for every single person, regardless of their ability level, for about the last 18 years. In addition, I have contacts in the legislature, in the North Carolina legislature, and for the last 7 years, I've actually been going up to the legislature and speaking not just at education meetings, but also with people on both sides of the aisle to try to make the educational system the best that it can be here in Wake County. In addition, I've spoken many times at the Wake County Commissioners meetings. In addition, I have been attending and listening in on and also speaking at school board meetings for the last 4 years. So I actually have a lot of connections with people all the way from the legislature into now the local area. And in addition, I have about 30 or 40 teachers that are right now in the school system that are supporting me and giving me input as to what's going well in the school system and what needs to be tweaked.
Will you step a little closer to the camera when you're reading the question, please?
This question's for Tyler only. What makes you a good candidate for the school board in your district? How did you get interested in running for the school board?
Well, thank you for that question. Well, throughout my campaign, I have said that every student, every teacher, every parent deserves a champion. A champion is going to fight for the needs of all of our students. And now more than ever, we are seeing that our students, our teachers, and our community needs a champion that is going to fight for all issues, that are going to represent all of the students, all of the families in District 9, not just those that agree or disagree, but all. And I've done that as a classroom teacher. I have worked with students from all walks of life. I have worked with students who, as a special education teacher, who had very high to low needs. But my role as a teacher was to differentiate what their learning abilities were so I could help them become the best they could be. And that is the knowledge that I have, and that is what I'm going to do as a board member. I have the skill sets to be collaborative. I'm trustworthy. And not only that, I know I have the experience. I'm knowledgeable about the do's and don'ts of our board member. And also, what you see is what you get. And I want to talk about integrity because it's important as a board member, because I have not had to go and do any scrubbing of social media to clean up anything simply because I do not put out information that is half-truths, that causes harm, because we have seen the power of words and language, and this is a race that we must choose truth over lies and hope over fear. So thank you for that question.
Okay, Michele, you have a minute for rebuttal.
I want to say that I think it's important for everybody to understand that while this is an absolutely nonpartisan position, it does not mean that anyone in this position is going to be apolitical. I think after the last 5 years, there is no one on this planet who is apolitical, and we probably know, if you're talking about people being politically active, Tyler would probably know a lot about that because he's actually been arrested several times at political action groups, so we might want to ask him about that. Yes, I have been active, but I have never been arrested for my actions politically being active. And I also like to say that what I bring to this board is the board's jobs are threefold. We need to work with the legislature to form policies. We need to manage a $3 billion budget. And we also need to be the liaison between the people and the school district. And I have done that already as a nurse, as a missionary, and as a foster parent, and also as a parent of students. So that is what I will bring to the board.
May I offer a 30-second rebuttal?
It's in the rules.
Well, I'm happy to go to the next question. Thank
We'll go to
you,
the next
Mr.
question, but 1 second, Justin wants to
Turn
adjust the
this on.
mic.
Sure.
We will have a wrap up at the end for any, so if you want to make comments.
Test. Great. Thank you.
Question number 3.
This one is for Michele only. As a homeschool parent, why are you running for the Wake County Public School System Board?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. Because I care about every single student, and I know that the direction of our schools determines what the direction of our nation becomes. And in 10 short years, every second grader will be a voting adult. And what I know is my children, like I said, they've been in public, they've been in private, and they've been in homeschool. My children have had to have IEPs. I've gone through the system, and what worked best for my kids in preparing them to be critically thinking, hardworking, and intelligent adults, and prepared for entering into the adult world and following and pursuing a career that they are passionate about was homeschooling. I can tell you this, there is not one homeschooler who really wants to be in charge of everything in their kids' lives. It is a big job. And just as I am paying my taxes into the public school system, I also, my husband and I, have to manage taking care of all the extracurriculars and all the curriculum and all of the issues with our children to prepare them for their life. So I would be more than happy to put my last child, who is in the 5th grade now, 10 years old, to put him into the public school system if I believe that the public educational system was focused on academic excellence and preparing our children for the career of their choice. And right now, that's why I'm running for school board, because I believe that every child should be prepared to be a critically thinking, hardworking, and driven adult when they get out of high school, ready to enter into their adult life.
May I offer?
You get 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Thank you. Well, there's a difference between public and private schools. Can you all hear me? Do I need this? The difference between a private and private schools, homeschools, you get to pick who you want in those seats. Public schools, you do not. You have every student comes from every walk of life, and it takes a whole child approach to meet the needs of our students, to bring our students to invest in our students and to help them become the best productive person they can be. And that is the beauty of our public schools. Our public schools do not, thank you. So, I thought I had ran out of time. Oh, sorry. Our public schools, trying to follow the rules. Our public schools are an investment into our communities. It's an investment that keeps on giving. When we invest in public schools, we are an investment into students' futures. Wake County Public Schools is the 3rd largest employer of the county. So therefore, we cannot continue to be the best state to do business in this state if our schools are not the best, and they are.
Thank you.
This question is for both candidates. Where are you receiving most of your funding for this race? And let's start with Michele.
Thanks for the question. Every bit of my funding has come from individuals in this district. There was a question online that somebody asked about that it looked like I had paid $7,000 or something of my own money. Let me tell you, my husband has been the sole supporter of a family of 7 for the last 8 years that we've lived here in North Carolina. I mean, I've worked part-time as a nurse, but that money came from, I had been redistricted, and so I had started a treasury as a candidate when I was in a different district, and then had to change over and start a new treasury account for this district, and so it all came from what looked like was my treasury. But it's all coming from concerned people. I will tell you, I am very thankful, I'm very humbled, and I understand the responsibility. I have people from the Black, Hispanic, Asian, Indian, as well as Arab community that are all coming to me, and they all want the same thing. They want to focus on academics, they want to remove the politically charged and the sexually mature and the racially divisive curriculum right now that is in our school system. And if I can just speak to the greatness of our school system in the last 10 years has dropped from 11th in the nation to 34th. And just this past June, nearly 50% of all of our graduating seniors did not pass their proficiency tests in math or reading. Nearly 50% didn't pass proficiency. And so we can do better, and we've got to do better. And we have an amazing opportunity this year to do that.
Was the question regarding our financials?
No, it was just regarding the funding for this race.
Okay, thank you. That's what thank you. So all of my funding thus far has come from individual donors as well. The average, and my treasurer here can do some fact checking, which I hope there is some happening today, but the average donation for my own line has been $162.50. The average donation from checks has been $61.77 to the exact T. So all of my dollars has come from individuals from the district who are concerned about public schools, who also understand that our schools are the backbone and is the heart of our democracy. And we need folks who believe in public education to be sitting in these board seats who are prepared to hit the ground running on day one. So I am honored to say that I have not received any PAC dollars, none whatsoever. My treasurer can fact check. Have we received any PAC donations?
No, sir.
There we are. So yes, it's the average number. So I'm grateful to say that that's $61.77. And you too can go to swansonforwake.com/donate and add your $61.77 as well.
Well done.
Sorry.
Okay, so this next question is for both candidates. What can the school board do to address low test scores, and how are scores from children with learning disabilities or emotional challenges factored into results? We'll start off with Tyler.
Well, thank you so much for that question. And, you know, 2020 was a very rough year. The nation felt we suffered a pandemic. And those pandemic laws affected some of our students. Now, Wake County Public Schools has implemented the Wake Together partnership with various individuals to address how we recover. And so let's just say this, I'm going on the record to say this, prior to the pandemic, we have seen that some of our students did not do their best academically, because this is the thing. If our students are dealing with real life issues that most of us have never had to deal with, I know that because I taught special education students who are dealing, if their housing is unstable, if they do not know where they're getting their next meal, if they do not know what is happening in their adult life, everything affects their academics. So when their mental health is not in check, as goes their academics. So it's a both and. It's not an either, or we have to have a holistic approach because our students, young folks are dealing with things that we've never seen. So I'm grateful that the Wake County Board of Ed approved the Together piece, and let me just say that. Wake County is the first one to implement this policy. And so all eyes right now are seeing what Wake County is doing, how this implementation goes as policy, so others can implement. So it does take us to be innovative, it takes us to be collaborative. So if you are concerned, which I see so many here are, join your PTA, volunteer in the schools, figure out the needs and help our students, because our students are dealing with real life issues and so is our teachers. So we have to have a little compassion, we have to have a little grace with our students. But I will say this on a very high note, that last year, the class of 2020 received over $141 million in academic scholarships. The class of 2020, that is amazing. So we can see that yes, these numbers may be bad, but it's a holistic approach. And I think that to learn more, you can go to my website to get some more.
Could you repeat the question?
Of course, thanks. Okay. What can the school board do to address low test scores, and how are scores from children with learning disabilities or emotional challenges factored into results?
As I mentioned, the roles of the school board, one of them is to set policy, and the other one is to manage the budget. And I think what we really need to do is we need to bring our funding back into the classroom and into classroom resources. There's some really practical ways to do this. What we've seen in our classrooms is, sadly, there's a lot of time spent in our classroom. There are a lot of resources. There's a lot of trainings that the teachers are expected to go through we're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for a year, and they actually have nothing to do with academic success. They have nothing to do with reading, writing, and math. And let me explain. In the elementary grade levels. Child development wise, children are just not able to be contemplating a lot of the philosophical and the ideological issues that we discuss as children. And I'm going to tell you why. Because children are concrete thinkers. So, but the amazing thing is, if a child has mastered, everybody's shaking their heads. Children believe in Santa Claus and they believe that Superman can fly. So they're very concrete thinkers. But I will say this. If our child has mastered, is absolutely excellent at reading, writing, and math, then they can learn anything in the future. And that is really where we need to focus our attentions, especially from kindergarten through third grade. We also need to be focusing on specials, because not every child is going to be incredibly drawn toward academics. We want them to actually be able to succeed in the things that they struggle with, but we also need to show them that there's other things that they might be wonderful at, and we need to give them that outlet and that opportunity. I think that one thing that the school board needs to do is focus on academics and curriculum, and focus on getting tutoring, focus on getting these teachers support. One of the things with teachers that is difficult, one of the things that's difficult is they have a classroom of 35 students, many of them ranging from special needs students all the way up to gifted and talented. So they're forced to kind of hang out in the middle of what they're able to do each day. I think that that needs to be addressed.
Well, I would like to quote the words of Whitney Houston. Show me the receipts with that. I'm sorry. Show me the receipts.
This question is for both candidates. Wake County, we'll start with Michele for this one. Wake County is one of the most racially and socioeconomically diverse areas in the entire country. Can you tell us about how you plan to represent such a diverse population?
Absolutely. I think that the amazing thing about the racial diversity is that we have such a wealth of culture, but we also have a wealth of experiences, and that should be reflected in our teaching staff. I think that we need to actively go out and try to get people of all different ethnicities and all different backgrounds to come into the teaching profession. I think that just last week or 2 weeks ago at the school board, there was a woman there that had her PhD, I believe, in education. She was saying that we are really in a difficult part because you guys know that we have a severe teacher shortage, not just here in Wake County, but in all of North Carolina. And she's saying the problem is there is not a very deep well that we can pick from of people that are choosing to go into education. And so that's one of the things that I think that we need to do, is we really need to focus on bringing people in there. But the other thing I think we need to recognize is we need to teach children that they need to judge themselves and one another by the content of their character. And I think when we are constantly focusing on outward appearance, when we're constantly focusing on gender, race, creed, or whatever it might be, we are losing that unity, that thing that brings us all together, which is we're all either students in this grade, or or we love to do sports. I've always told my children when they're young that, and even now, you naturally gravitate toward friends who enjoy the same things as you and who have the same personalities. And quite honestly, I think we can learn a lot from children that are on the preschool playgrounds. That they understand, they naturally make friends with people that look different from themselves. They don't care what their gender is. They don't care what kind of house they live in. They just choose the people that are kind. They choose the people that they enjoy their company. And I think that that's what needs to be the focus in our school system. We need to focus on what makes us all united rather than going into all of the things that make us so different. Not that we can't celebrate differences and talk about them, but I think our classrooms need to be a place that is the academic focus is focused on scholastics.
Trying to keep that alarm from.
Sorry.
Can you repeat the question for me, please? I'm sorry.
It was a long one.
Yeah. Wake County is one of the most racially and socioeconomically diverse areas in the entire country. Can you tell us about how you plan to represent such a diverse population?
Well, that's easy for me. I've been in the classroom. I understand and I appreciate diversity. I think we grow together and we learn together. And the great thing is our students are leading the way. And, I noticed that I mentioned the teacher shortage, and there's a massive teacher shortage. But this is the thing. You know why teachers are leaving the classroom? But the lack of respect. Words matter. Actions matter. So if we're going to find a way to build our teacher pipeline, we got to pay teachers a little more. That's why we are seeing this. We have got to trust teachers. We have to respect teachers. And words, I will say this, words truly matter. And so in order for us to lead, and how I will lead is by number one, centering my needs around the students first, because student voices are important. By secondly, lifting up and amplifying the voices of our teachers and working with communities. So that's how I will be prepared to lead. And also finding ways to be innovative, to building relationships with technology, SACs and other organizations in the communities to help us be innovative with our teaching, because the way I learned when I was in high school is totally different. And so the times are changing. So we have to continue to evolve the way that our students learn, and meeting our students where they are is going to be key. I have that experience. I've done it plenty of times as a special education teacher, and I will hit the ground running once I am elected to serve District 9.
This question is for both candidates. Would you be willing to meet with student council leaders in Wake County Public School System high schools to hear about their concerns, ideas, input, and opinions regarding school decisions or decisions made by the school board? Let's start with Tyler.
Absolutely, yes. Again, I've done it as a classroom teacher. I've centered the voices of all students, because when we center the voices of our students, the world is in a better place. Young folks have always had their hands on the freedom plow, and they have always been challenging the status quo in this country. And I am inspired daily by when I look at the board meetings and I hear young folks speaking out against the book banning, against the curriculums, and being involved in their curriculum. Because again, this is your education. Student voices must be centered. And I will go on and also say that every board member has a board advisory council, and I will restructure my council to make sure that I have an element of student voices, that I can check in with all the students in District 9, and making sure that they have the connection and I'm accessible to them to hear those needs. So I am going to do that. And again, our education works when student voices are being heard and students are being centered at everything that we do, and every policy that we implement. Student voices must be the center of that. All students must be.
I would agree with one thing, that we definitely need respect in our schools. I don't think that is necessarily the respect for a lifestyle. I think that's respect for rules. I think it's respect for the teacher's authority in the classroom. I think, I'm talking about the council. Well, okay. So for that reason, I would disagree that this needs to be completely student-centered. What this needs to be is focused on, while I would be absolutely willing to meet with student council, and I'll let you know that I did run for 2 years a student-run ministry that was called Generation Joshua, that was talking about civics and government and how to be involved in the civics, once you get into your teenage years. I'm totally in favor of that. But I would also like that to be based on the Constitution and the laws of North Carolina, and to encourage everyone so that they understand what their role is as a member, not just of a school community, but also with the community in the outside of this. But I do think that student-centered needs to be, we need to remember what is the ultimate goal of our educational system. And I, for one, believe that it needs to be academics first and foremost, and preparing them to pursue whatever career goals they want. I am of the belief, and the people that support me believe, that the religious as well as the moral, as well as kind of this social ideology in elementary and middle school, it needs to be dealt with at home
Michelle,
and within the
I'm
family.
going to stop you real quick. Can you reread the question, please?
Yes. Would you be willing to meet with student council leaders in WCPSS high schools to hear their concerns, ideas, input, and opinions regarding decisions made by the school board?
Yes, and I would be absolutely happy to do that. But what I'm saying is, I believe that we absolutely need to know what's happening with them, and that is one of the biggest roles in the school board. If you're going to be the liaison between the school district, between the community, as well as between the legislature and the county commission when you're talking about funding. So yes, it would be very welcome to participate with that. Thank you.
This question goes out to both candidates. For this one, we're going to start with Michele. What is your plan to address the bus shortage in WCPSS?
You know, that's really become a real crisis for a lot of families, even on the heels of not being able to go to work for a time because we were concerned about how our children were going to be, you know, when the schools were closed down. Now, it seems like even on a weekly basis, back in the spring of last year, we were hearing stories of either children were being left at the station or they were not going to have the staff to be able to bring them home from school, and the parents were going to be responsible for going and getting them. I would say this, really what I would like to have happen is I would like for every single school in Wake County to be an excellent school. And for that reason, it not to be having to bus kids an hour and a half every morning and an hour and a half every evening. For this reason, if there's, because there, here in Cary, it's a very different organization. It's a very different populace than we have maybe in Garner or in other areas where maybe both parents are working and potentially, or there's a single parent household, or a lot of places the parents don't even speak English as their first language. And so it's hard for them to be involved in the school process. It's hard for them to come and to help with their children. And so I think what is amazing is if those community schools, if every school in a community is as strong as it can possibly be, then you actually have the entire community. Wouldn't it be incredibly beneficial if instead of having parents have to sit for an hour to pick up their children and drop them off in the morning and pick them up in the evening, if you could actually get to the school within 5 minutes, that you could walk on a beautiful day. And I think what we need to do is work with the county commissioners in order to determine that, or to demand that those that are doing development, that are making hundreds of millions of dollars on multifamily structures, that they have to give money to new elementary, middle, and high schools. I think that that's responsible, because right now we are dealing with such an influx of people. They're saying 1 million people every year, and so we need for the funding to come from outside sources and not just from us. That's one of the reasons why we have the busing issue. We don't have proper schools for the new people coming to the area.
Tyler,
The question is, how will I assess the crisis of the bus shortages?
read it one more time, please.
How familiar are you, oh, sorry, that's the next one. Ignore me. That's my fault. Ignore me. What is your plan to address the bus shortage in WCPSS?
Well, it goes back to how we treat teachers, is how we treat those who are taking care of our most precious cargo, our students. Respect. I think Aretha Franklin said it best, RESPECT. So we must respect all of our staff, all of those who are in our schools. And so this is the thing, we are competing with private entities to get bus drivers. So yes, there has been a bonus to recruit more bus drivers, but again, when we are paying bus drivers $16.50 roughly, think about those who can go and work for the city of Cary or other entities that are making more than that. So we have to find ways to reallocate funds to address those needs, and again, it's that whole child approach. That is what you all are going to hear me continue to say, because it works. So the things are, we must invest in public education, and I will also work with our local towns to see how we can implement certain ways to walk to schools. You know, having biking to schools on these great days, well, I agree with that. But I do think we have got to go back to the piece of respect. If we don't respect our teachers, we don't respect our bus drivers, that's what's leading to these shortages. We must reimagine and redefine the respect that goes there. And I will say this, my grandfather retired as a truck driver for over 40 years, and then he got tired and went back and started driving the school bus in Gilbert County Schools, where I'm from. Because there's a shortage, and we're seeing that these older folks who are dedicated, these veteran teachers, veteran folks are going back to assess the needs. So that's where the community can come in. And if you have those CDL license, help us out. If you know someone who needs a part-time gig, like my grandfather who was driving my grandmother crazy, join those, help us out. But that's how it's gotta take. We've gotta be innovative, and we gotta meet our communities where we are. And so that is what I'm prepared to do, is find and work with our commissioners to increase that pay so we can get bus drivers in these seats, and we can get more, so we don't have to worry about kids sitting on buses for long. Thank you.
This question is directed at Tyler only. How would you improve the school safety?
Thank you. That is a great question. That's the question that's affecting all of us. Can you hear me? Oh, there we are. That is the question that is affecting all of us. And I have went through and read this this audit that WCPSS did last year. It is with the Wake County School System Safety, and it makes key recommendations. And on that, this was done in November of last year. So what I would do immediately is see where we are. This audit was completed in November, and if elected, I would want to know where we are on these recommendations. What does it take? What do we have to do? Where is the funding that we can get this? So I will continue to work with our county commissioners, our state legislators, and also this is the thing, we have to reimagine what school safety is. I do not agree with turning our schools into an airport or to a prison system. I don't agree with that. But what I do agree with is making sure we have a role for our school resource officers, we have a role for our school personnel, and also understanding that our school resource officers are not the disciplinarians of the schools. That is the role of the principals and the administrations. But there are roles that we have to place, and there are perimeters that must be there so all kids feel safe. So yes, I do believe that we must invest and respect our teachers, respect our school resource officers, because yes, it's a both and approach, and it requires all of us. And I can say for a fact that if you go to the WCPSS website, there are some key audits here, and there are some great pieces in this audit, but there also is some places where we must go harder, and we must assess everything. And I will say that all 292 of our schools, or 192 of our schools, had an audit done by outside agencies, law enforcement, that actually sat there and assessed all the parameters. So this is the thing, we have to lock our doors. I know as a teacher, I had to use my little badge, and if I forgot my badge, I had to run back to the car, but locking our doors is safe, and I know if anyone has visited those little schools, you hear that little buzzer that buzzes you in. I'm wrapping up. That buzzes you in. Those are the best appeals that we have to make sure that every school has, so therefore we can, again, check out my website, Swanson And Michele /issues for more on school safety.
Michelle, you get a minute for rebuttal.
Okay. I'm glad you addressed the audit that was done. It's important to note that these outside people that are professionals in dealing with safety, they had two different requirements or two different suggestions that were very strong. And the first one was that we would have a student resource officer in every school in Wake County. We do not have those. They specifically said that we needed them in the elementary school. Now, those that are concerned about our children being frightened by people having guns, you need to understand that you can have a plainclothes police officer who's in a sport coat and in a pair of slacks and have a concealed carry, and the children never even know that they have a weapon. But here's the thing that's important about physical safety, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional safety. Oh, I only get a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. But so with physical safety, we need to understand that anyone that wants to come in and to harm children or our teachers or our staff, they are cowards. They do not want to have anybody that's going to come with them. So even them knowing, just like having a thing in your yard that says that you have a security thing on your house, it detracts from people coming. So even knowing that there are those people there is going to bring safety to our schools.
Who's next? So this question is directed to you, Michelle.
Okay.
Kind of piggybacks on the last one. Should teachers be armed in schools?
You know, I think that every citizen should have the right to a concealed carry if they wanted it. Now, do I think that teachers should be responsible for having the safety of their children? Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is, as a constitutional Second Amendment right, every person should have the ability to protect themselves. And there's no reason, as I said, for a child to ever know that a teacher ever had a gun in their locked, in the locked bottom drawer of their desk. So do I think that it is the right of every person to have that? Absolutely. But do I think that that is the way that we promote safety in our schools? No, I don't. I think that we need to have a great, not only a locking system, I agree with Tyler in that, but we also need to have a monitoring system in the hallways where we can see what is happening, where we can see if there are doors that are propped open, where we can even see when someone's going into a bathroom. There are a lot of situations here in Wake County where women and young girls don't even feel safe going into the bathrooms, and they actually are trying to not use the restroom for an entire 8-hour period of time, and that is detrimental in so many different ways, physically as well as emotionally. And so, do I think that teachers, that they might feel safer and that they should be able to have their Second Amendment rights? Yes, but do I think that they should be the ones responsible for safety in the schools? Absolutely not.
Tyler, you get a minute for rebuttal?
I believe it was our director, Russ Smith, that said that the district does not support arming teachers. We already have a massive shortage with teachers. I think the legislative body tried to implement some legislation around arming teachers. This is the thing. If we want to lose our teachers, give teachers guns and we will lose numerous teachers. Because teachers are not law enforcement. That is why we have school resource officers who are prepared, who are trained, and again, it is a both and. And I do believe that there is a role for school resource officers, there's a role for our school counselors, our social workers, our nurses. That is what safety feels. But I unequivocally oppose putting guns in the hands of teachers because that is a disaster that is just waiting to happen. So I'm a no.
This question is for both candidates. If you support school resource officers, how do we handle children who have chronic behavioral problems? Let's start with Tyler.
Yes, thank you. So I've stated that the school resource officers are not the disciplinarians of our schools. Now, I have said this, and I believe another board member has coined this term, but our principals are the mayors of their schools. They are the most powerful entities of their schools. And so this is the thing. I trust our administrators. I trust our school resource officers, but again, school resource officers are not the disciplinarians. Now, the thing is, I've had students who have had issues of behavior, but this is the thing. We have to get to that root cause. It's that whole child approach. Let's start asking some probing questions. Why are you misbehaving? Well, maybe the kid had a rough night and had to take care of their siblings. Maybe there was a fight at home. Maybe there was something life-threatening that happened to them. So those are the issues that our students bring into our classrooms. That is that whole child approach. And every great educator also knows how to ask those probing questions, get to the root cause of that, and come up with solutions to deal with that. But I do not believe in just pushing our kids out because that leads to that school to prison pipeline, and that affects Black and brown students, poor students the most, when we began to turn our schools into a prison, because our schools reflect our community. They're community schools. And our students, again, are dealing with real life issues, and they do not know how to fully articulate that. So that is why we need more social workers in the building, more school counselors in the building. And you know what? We can do that because you know why? The Leandro has the funds, and it's the roadmap that pays for all of this, so our taxpayers do not have to continue to pay and pick up the burden of pick up the constitutional duties of our failed legislator for not investing in our schools.
I'm not sure where you think they're getting the money if it's not coming from taxpayers, because the government doesn't have any way of making money except from us.
We have a surplus of our dollars.
Yeah, we do, so we might want to be using it to tutor our children that are failing in all of their subjects. But I will say, student resource officers, to get back on topic, student resource officers, I think that they can potentially do a lot more than just policing the building if, and here's one of the things, part of the problem with student resource officers is that they are not a part of an organization within the school. I think that those people should be there should be a department of safety within our school system where those student resource officers are trained in that way. Right now, we're using people from private entities, we're using them from the city, we're also using them from the sheriff's office, and they all really don't have one person that they answer to. Like, there's just a lot of different leaders. And so we know when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, things get very confusing. I would say this about student resource officers that is an incredible benefit. I absolutely agree with Tyler that the first response should not be to discipline and harm someone or to extricate them from their classroom if they're acting out, because I agree, there is always a reason why someone is acting out. And I think that we need to get to the bottom of that reason and find out what that is. Do I I think that the teachers should be the ones that have to do that. I don't think they actually have the time to do that. So I think they can absolutely say to the counselor, you know, can you talk with this person? They seem to be having issues. But also with student resource officers, they could be a potential mentor to young people. And there have been many cases of people, young men especially, when they have male role models that are in uniform, but they are a loving and a kind person, that they end up actually benefiting them and being like a father or, you know, like a mentor to them. And so that is another way that we, if they're well trained, that we could absolutely use student resource officers to help our young people to, you know, to overcome the difficulties that they face outside of school and in their life in general.
So this is the correct question this time. So this is for both candidates. We're going to start with Tyler. How familiar are you with the curriculum that is currently being taught in our schools?
Oh, I'm very well familiar with it. I taught. I taught. Let me just say that our standards are ran and controlled by the Department of Public Instruction, that Superintendent Catherine Truitt is the state superintendent who controls and makes recommendation of what is taught in our schools. Our local municipalities, our local boards of eds do not have that free range to write whatever curriculum they feel. There's checks and balances. The House Education Committee, which I think the General Assembly is controlled under Republicans, so I think Republicans control the legislator. They also control the DPI. So I think the Republican Party is in control of that. And so the nonsense about the critical race theory that is being taught is not there, because that's usually controlled. But this is the thing. I trust our teachers. I trust our teachers to make decisions that are best for our students and to teach what is best. And I also believe as a teacher that my students learned better when they were able to see themselves in everything that they were learning. And that is that whole child approach, which I will continue to push and say. Students learn when they're able to see it, feel it, and understand it, and feel empowered by what they're learning. That is how our students learn. That is how we are able to hold that accountability of seeing what's happening. But this piece of the curriculum that is just free range, it's asinine. It's not, I'll stop there.
It was for both of us, or it was?
It was for both of you.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I'm not sure what he's referring to with free range teaching, but I will say this. I am familiar, and I'm getting even more familiar because, as I said, there's about 30 teachers that are actually right now in the Wake County Public School system, many of whom actually have been in the system for decades and have retired and have been sharing with me just the difference in how things ran 10 and 20 years ago when we were one of the best school systems in the state and what's happening right now. And if you're referring to it being a lie that there is CRT that's kind of being taught in our schools, you're exactly right that it's not taught as a class. Like, you don't go to CRT class. And you might want to know that they don't call it critical race theory anymore. They now call it, according to North Carolina State University, when they gave last year their math summit, they're now calling it culturally responsive teaching. And if you guys are interested, I have this copy of what the desired outcomes and learning objectives were for math. And there is not one statement on here that is an actually objective, measurable goal for math. I will tell you, math as a subject is the one completely objective course that we will ever take in our lifetime. There is a right and there is a wrong answer. If our children learn all of the ways of, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and percents, and decimal points, and counting money, and all these types of things, that definitely can be used. It's the only way to learn math. We can't learn it just through feeling it. And so that's part of the problem, is when we're talking about the way that things have been changed to do this whole child initiative, we need to understand that has actually been a social experiment, and it's failed. If you're seeing that our children are not passing their proficiency exams from year after year after year, then we have to go back to actually what worked when we were one of the top states in math, in all of our curriculum. So so that would be my take.
This is for both candidates. We'll start off with Michelle. Okay. The North Carolina Standard course of study defines the content standards for each K through 8th grade in each high school course to provide a uniform set of learning standards for every public school in NC. Do you agree with the process used to determine the curriculum standards being used in Wake County?
No, I don't, because it's all, as I said, it's all a very subjective course. If you go to the DPI and you look at the scope and sequence, even if you look at this in the math, the measuring tools, it's how can you know when someone has gotten sensitive enough? How do you know when they have achieved that level of open-mindedness? When do you know when they understand culturally relevant issues? Now, do you know whether or not they can spell? Absolutely. Do you know whether or not they can do math problems? Yes, we do. But those are not the things that we're looking at to determine what the success rate is of our students. Now, do we need to do both? Absolutely. But what I'm saying is there needs to be something concrete and measurable, because right now we're just using these end of grades tests, and I'm not even a fan of that. I mean, while it's great to know what people have learned, I think that when you're talking about individual students, I think that the teacher should look at the beginning of the year and know where a student is, whether it's in reading, writing, math, what they're able to do in science, and the goal should be that they're supposed to get to maybe these 3 levels in each of those things, and that's how it should be measured, right? Every child is going to be different where they're starting, but if you're seeing success at the end of the year, then that should be a successful school year, and that is what should be the measurement tool for whether the teachers have been successful and whether the children have been successful under that education. But I think we need measurable, tangible things so that we can know when they're being successful and when they're not. And that's not to say to just get rid of everything else, but I think that we definitely need something tangible. And right now, the policies, and it's really a difficult thing to measure for the most part.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. The North Carolina Standard Course of Study defines the content standards for each K through 8th grade in each high school course to provide a uniform set of learning standards for every public school in North Carolina. Do you agree with the process used to determine the curriculum standards being used in Wake County?
I do. And I will say this because, and this is the thing, it takes 3 years for them to kind of develop and update the curriculum for every subject. But this is the thing, what students are learning in Wake County, they're also learning here in Johnston County. It's uniform. And it's an input that includes teachers, it includes department, and it also includes those specialists that understand. But the thing is, I think we agree about I agree, I don't really believe in over-testing our kids because our kids are more intense. And those testing scores do provide data. However, data can always be skewed, and we can look at data however we choose. So the short answer, I do, and again, those are standards that are uniform, they're concrete, and they are laid out across the board. And so there's always room for improvement. I think we always have to go back and adjust and reassess every certain years, which I believe they do. But yes, now stop.
All right, this question is for Michele only. You mentioned removing critical race theory and social emotional learning from our curriculum in your platform. These are very vague and broad terms. Can you give concrete examples of how these topics are being taught in Wake County and what you would ban or remove from the curriculum?
Sure, thank you. I think you're exactly right in that they are very broad topics, and that's what I was discussing before. What I believe is that children, especially in elementary school, I think there's a really easy way to teach social and emotional learning, and that's, as we discussed before, it's having rules in the classroom. It's teaching the children. I say when I was young, this is how we were taught in class. You keep your hands to yourself, you wait your turn to speak, you respect the teacher, you respect other people's belongings, and you use kind words. And I think if that was the premise for every elementary school, they are going to be learning how to treat one another. It doesn't have to be this intense discussion all the time about how people are feeling. And quite honestly, with a lot of the panorama surveys and the things, you need to understand, I don't know if you know of all of the questions that are on these panorama surveys, which they say are going to be anonymous. They're not anonymous. As soon as your child is given an iPad or some type of a digital device, that follows them for the rest of their school year. So everything they do on that is being monitored and the data is being collected, and we're actually paying, and I do have the receipts for this, we're actually paying outside influences outside of North Carolina to hold on to this data. They're giving it to the CDC, they're giving it to the NIH. And here's the issue. If you have a child that is really struggling with things at home, we should actually make the school a place of safety and a place where they can actually escape from the intense stuff that they're dealing with at home. It doesn't mean that you ignore it, but why don't we focus on making the school a place where they enjoy learning, and it's just a time to be carefree and enjoy their childhood. And that's the reason why I think that we need to focus on academics, and we need to focus on not discussing with the children how they feel about everything all day long. I think it's just too intense for young children.
Minute for rebuttal.
I would like to go to the next question, please.
Okay.
This question is for both candidates. What is your position on banning books of any kind in our schools? What criteria would you use to justify banning of books? Michele?
Sure. We need to define the word ban, because ban entitles that you don't want it to ever be able to be in circulation, and that is not at all what I believe about any book. I think that if you want to go and get any book that you want and read it to your child, you can go to the public school, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble and find any book that somebody has written. I am not in favor of that. What I am in favor of, however, is obeying the obscenity laws of North Carolina. The obscenity laws of North Carolina, you may have read in any of our newspapers, seen on TV in the couple of years, there's been several people who have been arrested and done prison time for having what? For having pedophilia on their, and child sex tapes on their personal computer at home. So my question is, why do we uphold those laws for people out in the public arena, in the private arena, which I absolutely agree with, but we are okay with there being depictions of children participating in sex acts in our classrooms and on our shelves, and the parents don't know about it? Here's the issue. The government schools are paid for by us. They are public schools. If you want to have conversations with your child, if you want children to be sexualized and know what people are doing behind closed doors, then that is up to you as the parent. It should not be across the board discussed in a classroom setting, and it definitely should not be discussed. It should not be offered to your children without parents' consent. And I will tell you that if you look at right now, there was just a Johns Hopkins study that showed that in the last 8 years that the suicide rate for people that are transitioning, for children that are participating in taking any puberty blockers, that are discussing these things, the suicide rate has doubled. And it is not because they don't have the feelings of people. It is because those chemicals are dangerous to people. They're dangerous to our young people, especially in the midst of puberty.
Would you like the question reread?
Please.
What is your position on banning books of any kind in our schools? What criteria would you use to justify banning of books?
So I look at this from a First Amendment right. I believe that our students have the ability to read. You're right. But I also do trust our librarians in our school to put age-appropriate books. Books that are in high school are very different from books that are in elementary school. And I'm going to touch a little bit stronger on this First Amendment piece. I believe that our students should have the right to walk down their hallways, to pick a book that they see themselves in, and exercise their First Amendment right. If my dear friend to my left was able to exercise her First Amendment right on January 6th, our students should be able to do the exact same thing, but I have never seen a book in our school library that has caused a deadly insurrection. I've never seen a book in our school that has caused students to cause harm, but I have seen books in our schools that offers love, compassion, and also allows students to see themselves in what they're reading. That is the power of knowledge. That is the power of these books. And so no, I do not believe in banning books, because our librarians are trained and they know what books are age appropriate to be in our schools. And there's a difference. You will not see a book that's in a high school, in a middle school, or you may not see an elementary school book in a high school book, because they know what is age appropriate.
This next question is for Tyler only. I know you are the Wake Tech rep of NCAE. Do you agree with NCAE's Tamika Haley when she says learning loss is a false construct? Do you
Well,
need me to agree with that?
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
because I kind of stumbled. I
Oh,
didn't
that's fine.
prepare.
You're fine.
I know you are the Wake rep for NCAE. Do you agree with NCAE's Tamika Kelly when she says learning loss is a false construct?
Well, when I was a teacher, I was a building rep for Wake NCAE, and so this is the thing. I think prior to the pandemic, we have seen that our students were learning, every student was learning different. I think the pandemic exacerbated that issue. It pulled the Band-Aid out, and it showed that, yes, students learn different. So I do think that there was an interruption of learning, but I taught in the pandemic, and I know that the learning did not stop. The learning just transitioned from the classroom to folks' individual home. So I am grateful that Wake County Public Schools have saw that there was an interruption of loss, and that is why they began the Wake Together project, which is going to offer some remediation and some tutoring with the YMCA to address the needs of our students. So yes, we have to do more. The pandemic showed that there was an issue with the way our students learn, but the thing is, the report cards just came out on WCPSS.net, and you will see that the vast majority of our students in these schools performed well above the state average. They did. You can go on WCPSS.net on the homepage and you can look through and see some of these great achievements that they've had. It's there. I don't believe in alternative facts. They're there. But we also know that we have to do more. We have to do more to reach the whole child and understand that all of our children learn at a different rate. And that, yes, some students, again, as a special education teacher, you have to differentiate the learning abilities of all students. And so, yes, we have to do more. We have to invest in our students, and we have to meet our students where they are in order to get them where we want them to be. But it starts at meeting the student where they are, seeing the whole child, and again, doing that whole child approach. Thank you.
Michelle, minute?
You might want to check out, they just started a whole new department called the Department of Learning Loss and Recovery, and they just gave a report back in July that stated that across the board, our students are 6 to 15 months behind, and they said that it is going to take them 4 to 5 years to get back that. So whether you call it learning loss, whether you call it learning delays, whatever you call it, it is a travesty of what's happening because we don't have 4 or 5 years to get the learning back with our children. So I think what needs to happen is we've got to start focusing on the basics of education. We've got to get all of these social and political ideologies out of our classroom. We don't have the time and we don't have the teacher resources to do that. And in response to what you talked about, if you're talking about money, we had $40 million left over from COVID, and that could have gone to a lot of tutoring. They just asked for $1.5 million for this YMCA program for one semester, and they said they're coming back to the board in January. And my concern is they have a volunteer. They have 287 volunteers. For $1.5 million for volunteers, I think that money would have been very well spent giving to the teachers to tutor after school and to help the students where they needed it.
This question is also directed at both candidates. Tell us what you know about the current status of the Leandro decision. I'll start.
So the Leandro decision, 24 years and counting, and the Supreme Court just made a decision last week that they definitely, they said that it needs to go back, obviously, to the legislature. This has been a nightmare from day one. And the problem with Leandro is we look at now 24 years, guys, that's 2 generations of students that have risen up and gone through those 5 county schools, and they're already on their own. So we're not going to go back and be able to do that. But do I believe that we should absolutely fund a sound and basic education? Absolutely, 100%. And I think many of these places that they're losing population. If you look at 4 out of the 5 counties that are in question with Leandro, their population is going down because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have new companies coming in. And so part of of the reason why I think we need to have them partner with their county commissioners. We need to bring business, we need to bring infrastructure, we need to bring a reason why more people can move to those areas. But in my opinion, we should be paying teachers more, and we should potentially even be putting 2 teachers in every classroom where you do have a lot of children that are struggling, where they need extra support. We need to be dumping our money into the areas where you don't have all of the community support in these schools, so that every single school in North Carolina gives every student the opportunity to absolutely be their best and to achieve their goals for their life.
And that is exactly what Leandro does. It's exactly what it does. Leandro offers a roadmap to the North Carolina General Assembly, and it's been going on for roughly 28 years now, that the fact that the General Assembly did not even fund a sound and basic education. So this is the thing. Leandro takes the burden off of the taxpayers. The taxpayers in Wake County have been picking up the cost for the General Assembly not doing their constitutional duty. I'm sorry. However, Leandro will provide North Wake County $291 million additional dollars. That is 8 years of funding. That is 8 years of the burden removed from the taxpayers, because we are fortunate here in Wake County to have county commissioners that believe in public education, that are taking up the burden of the taking up the constitutional burden that the General Assembly failed to do. Leandro also puts additional bodies, assistant teachers in K-5 classrooms. Leandro also provides funding for school nurses, school counselors, school psychologists, but guess what? Just like the teacher pipeline that is shrinking, there's also a shrinking of the pipeline of nurses, psychologists, social workers. So we have to, again, it's the respect thing. We have to go back and respect all of those who are in our classrooms if we want our students to succeed. So yes, Leandro has it. I think I have what Leandro offers to Wake County, and yes, it is all 100 counties will benefit once the court decide that the General Assembly has neglected our students, our children, for over the past 2 decades. Leandro is the roadmap, and I hope the General Assembly will fulfill their constitutional duties.
So this question is directed at Michele only. Do you believe that the public school system is a socialist indoctrination program, as you've publicly said?
Yep, I do. I think that the whole plan of the public educational system from day one has actually been to kind of control the thinking of our young people. I will say this, it was started by, if you look at Dewey, and if you read anything about Dewey, it was talking about wanting to kind of redo what the Ford Motor Company did in the way that they had an assembly line and their ability to just kind of pump out cars. They said, you know what, we can do that actually with the public educational system, because at the time when they started it, you looked at, we had what, one-room schoolhouses, right, where you had kids all the way from kindergarten all the way up until they graduated from school. And so the older kids were teaching the younger, and it was just kind of a mixed, it was almost like a homeschool situation, because you had kids of all ages in the same thing. But they said, you know what, that's not efficient, and because we had the need for wanting to educate everybody, because it seemed like only the people that had the money could send their kids even to these one-room schoolhouses, and so, or who were close enough to the town to do that. And my point in saying that is this: when our scholastics are declining, when we have children that cannot read, write, or do math, and yet we are promoting over and over again that we must discuss with them how they feel about things, and culturally that the United States is systemically racist, and that we're telling teachers that they have to apologize for their whiteness. They need to get to the depth of who they are and apologize for their white privilege. And we need to put people into homogenous groups by either the color of your skin, or by who you are attracted to, or by what your culture is, which is what is happening in our schools. Then that tells me that the goal is not the individual, the goal is the group, and the group think mentality is exactly what it is. And I will say this: the Democratic Party in 2020 called themselves the Democratic Socialists.
Tyler, a minute for rebuttal?
I don't even know what the question was.
You want me to repeat it?
If we don't, I would rather just go to the next question. It's not even worth my response.
This question is for Tyler only. As a special needs teacher, what can be done to improve services for special needs students and their families?
Well, that is an amazing question. I'm grateful for that question. This is the thing. Our special education students are students, and so we must remove those labels first, because we cannot continue to put our students in these categories based on their different learning abilities. I also believe too that our schools must center the needs of all students. As a special education teacher, and when you look at Wake County right now, you'll see that the vast majority of shortages are special education, simply because you get burnt out with the paperwork. You get burnt out with everything else, because as a special education teacher, you wear many hats. You wear the hat of oftentimes a social worker. You wear these different hats to address the needs of those students. So I do believe that number one, we have to, it's funding. It is the funding piece that goes there. I hear some chuckling, but you know, it's a business. If something is failing, you have to find ways to improve. I'm not saying our students are failing, but I'm saying we have to figure out the root cause of this. And we have to invest. And again, Leandro makes that case of what has to be done. So there is some things that we must work on, but again, we must trust and treat our teachers as the professionals that they truly are. And I will say this, I have never went to a mechanic and told my mechanic what is wrong with my car off of a 30-second YouTube video that I've seen. And I am not going to sit there into the business of telling a teacher what they must do based off of some QAnon post that they have read off of social media. It does not work. We have to trust teachers. We have to center the needs of all students in order to meet the needs of our students if we want them to be productive members of society.
Being a mother of a special ed student, I think I have a little bit more experience than just 1.5 years in the classroom. And 1 year, yeah, but 1.5 of them were actually behind a screen because the schools were closed. But I will say this about special education. I think one of the biggest problems is that we have stopped allowing our special ed students to actually compete with one another in terms of people that are able-bodied and similar in their abilities. And here's why I say this. Do I think that everybody should be able to be in the same homeroom class and the same history class and whatnot? Yes. But I think especially in elementary school, when you were looking at kindergarten through 3rd grade, I think that every kindergarten classroom that you should have teachers, you have a team of, let's say, 5 or 6 teachers. I think that you should have a teacher that is specifically going to take the special ed students for math or for reading, and they're going to deal with them where they are on the spectrum. And at the same time with the gifted and talented, I think we can divide our children up. Let me just finish, please. I think we can divide our children up by what their abilities are, specifically in math and reading, and that is going to help our special ed students significantly, as well as challenge our gifted and talented students.
I just want to remind you that you agreed to the 2-minute limit. So
That wasn't 2 minutes.
Or, I'm sorry,
minute
the
for a
1
rebuttal.
minute, but you agreed to the terms.
Yeah.
So I just, when I say time, please don't.
Okay, and you agreed that we weren't gonna go off topic, so when he's attacking me, can you give him a little tap?
Can we go to the next question?
Yes.
This question is for Michele only. Can you please clarify what you mean when you say, if elected, I will return special education programs?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was just discussing. I think that every child I believe in healthy competition. I believe there's a reason why we have Special Olympics. It's because when you are with people who have able-bodied, you see what they're able to do, and it inspires you to actually be your best. I think when we're combining everyone into the same exact academic classes for every classroom, I think those special ed students are never going to be able to compete with the gifted and talented students. So that really is discouraging to them, and why even try their best? Where at the same time, if you divided them out for different issues, they can actually be excelling in that, and they can see that, wow, I can really achieve something, and I can be the best at this in my classroom. And that's the reason why I think that we need to bring back that part of special education where we're actually focusing on dealing with the children, whether they're special ed, whether they're academically gifted, whether they're in the middle, whether they have dyslexia, whether they have whatever. I think that's when we're talking about dealing with the child as the individual. I think we need to offer those services, but I will tell you, healthy competition is a good thing, and focusing on mediocrity and everyone being the same is actually detrimental to our country as a whole, and that's not what made us the strongest, most prosperous, most ingenious, and quite frankly, the most generous nation in the history of the world. It's people doing hard things and overcoming and seeing things and wanting to achieve more than they ever thought or dreamed.
Tyler, a minute for rebuttal.
No, thank you.
Okay, this question is for both candidates. What can we do to attract and retain quality teachers? Mr.
Well, I must go back to the spelling chart and quote Aretha Franklin again. It's respect, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. We are losing teachers because of the hateful rhetoric that is coming from some of these races. These asinine claims of accusing teachers of things that are not taking place in the classroom is alarming, and that is why we are seeing teachers walking out. We are also seeing this massive shortage of teachers because of the General Assembly's failure to pay teachers more than $37,000. With the cost of inflation, with the money that we're seeing there, those salaries are asinine. It's a slap in the face to someone who is putting their all into the next generation. Every career is only made responsible by teachers. So it is past time that we trust and treat our teachers as professionals, and it is past time for us to put our money where our mouth is and invest in the classrooms and the teachers. Wake County has the most teachers that are national board certified, that hold master's degrees, and some of them even hold PhDs. But you know what? The North Carolina General Assembly neglected and ended master's pay, so therefore teachers are not even recognized for going back to school to better themselves, to be better teachers, and not being compensated for that. So we have to have a General Assembly that believes in public education, and I'm so grateful for the county commissioners that are actually increasing the teacher supplement pay so we can retain teachers. But I also want to put a strong emphasis, lastly, on the Build Your Own program that we have in Wake County, which is investing in high school students who want to become teachers and growing that pipeline. And I will work to strengthen that, and I will also work to find ways to retain and recruit our teachers. But it starts with respect.
So was this a question to both of us or just to him?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I would disagree that the data says that teachers are leaving because of pay, but let me say this. Do I believe that teachers should absolutely be paid more? Yes, 100%. And actually, I was working with the General Assembly and saying that I think I would like to start off teachers right out of college at $55,000 a year, and every 4 years to increase that by $10,000, and so that you can, and then $25 an hour for anything extra that you do outside of school. So if you are leading a group, if you are coaching, if you're doing anything like that, if you're doing tutoring, I think that should be the funding. But this is the reason why, if you look at a lot of the exit interviews from the teachers and why they have left, it's actually that there is so much extra stuff put on them that is not the reason why they went into teaching. Teachers love students. They love children. They love to see people learn. They want to prepare them for their next stage in life. And so when we are putting all of these other things on top of them, when we're asking them to be disciplinarians, when we're asking them to be counselors and diagnosticians, and we're asking them to be police officers and all these things, and you have a varied array of kids' abilities, they're not getting the satisfaction from the job because they feel like they're just policing everything in the classroom just to try to get through a process. That the majority of teachers that have left, most of them, when they leave, many of them go to private schools. So if it was about funding, that doesn't hold weight because most private school teachers get paid less. And so that's why I'm saying we need to make the atmosphere. I absolutely agree with respect, but what has to to happen is there has to be control and a lack of chaos in the classrooms. There are many teachers in middle schools that are actually fearful. There are teachers that I've spoken to who actually left the profession because they were fearful, because they did not have the support of the administration when there was chaos in their classroom. And that has to change. And that is something that the board can do.
So this question is for both candidates. We'll start with Tyler. If elected, would you be willing to encourage your fellow board members to volunteer or substitute teach in a classroom to assist during the shortage?
Absolutely. Service is about serving others, and as elected officials, you have to serve. You have to serve your community, and I am willing, and I will put on my teacher classroom, I have on my teacher slacks and shoes, and I am willing to go back into the classroom and do my piece to make sure that, number one, I understand the needs that are coming out of the classroom to help me in my policy-making role to ensure that I am assessing and reaching all students, I'm reaching all parents, and that I am also in tune with what is happening in the classroom. So absolutely, if elected, you will best believe that I will be in the classroom at a very frequent basis to ensure that I have my hands on the pulse so I can be a great decision maker and a great policy maker. So thank you for that question.
Absolutely. I would be more than happy to do that. You might not know that I have been educating in the private sector, teaching biology, chemistry, Spanish, and health and civics. But this is the thing, there's only 9 board members. So what I would like to see happen actually is in substitute teaching, I'd like to see us going into the community and finding people who have retired from the profession and inviting them back in. I'd like to see people that might be empty nesters that have run businesses and they might be able to, teach classes on entrepreneurship or other things. I think we have such a wealth of people in Wake County that we could be taking from their life experiences and actually helping them to engage with our students and prepare our students for life. So I think that it would be a really great thing for the board to look at creating kind of a community substitute pool so that people could participate in that. I think it would be beneficial for the students as well as for the community as a whole. I think it would be uniting, and I think it would be using people to the best of their abilities. When people have retired, I think that they very much appreciate being respected and being asked to talk about what their specialty was or what they did in their work life. And I think that's a great way to honor our seniors in our community as well.
Well, it's 3 o'clock, so I want to thank everyone, first of all. And I want to give each of you 2 minutes for a wrap-up. I know that there were some faces that were made. There might be some comments that were made. I thought everyone might want to have 2 minutes to just kind of wrap up. And we'll let ladies go first.
Okay.
So, sure.
I appreciate all of y'all's time. I want you to know that I am running for this position because I believe that every child should have the absolute best chance at whatever they were created to do. I do believe that all people are created equal. I believe that everyone has something about them that is a gift, that is a talent, that is a passion. And our schools should be the people, it should be the place where that is brought out of every individual, and it is enhanced and it is strengthened, and it is preparing them to go back into the community and to give back to the community that has given so much to them. I will say this, after 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year, for 13 years, I am a firm believer that every student graduating from the Wake County Public School System should be prepared to follow whatever their career goal is. If that means that they are going to go on to 4 more years of college, excellent, they should be prepared for that. But I would love for us to bring trades, for us to use these amazing corporations to come back into our school system. Wake Tech right now has a great partnership with new businesses that are coming into Wake County, and they're offering for them to send people into Wake Tech to do internships with people, to train them to be the next great employees for these businesses. I think our schools should all be doing that. We should be launching our children into adulthood with hope and with a drive and with a desire and with a passion and with being equipped to be critically thinking and able to solve problems and also able to be financially independent and to give back to the communities that just trained them.
Thank you. Tyler?
My professional and personal has always been about service. Can you all hear me? I need to start using this. So my professional and personal life has always been about service. Serving others is the rent that we pay on this earth. And I would be honored to receive the votes of the votes of District 9, to amplify every voice of District 9, to represent every student, and to bring a fresh perspective to the Board of Education. And I want to thank these students for being here today and to being involved in this process, because it's your education that we're talking about. It's your voices that are missing, and it's your future that we are talking about. And so I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to ensure you that you will have a champion in me if elected. And I want to assure the parents out here that you will have a champion if elected. Because a champion is someone who is going to take up the issues, who's going to hold that baton, and is going to speak truth to power, even if you're the lone voice, speaking that truth to power. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I think that you've heard a lot through this race. You've heard a lot from both of us. And this is a race that's about choosing truth over lies, hope over fear, and choosing trust. And that's the piece. We have to trust each other to move forward, and we have to be collaborative. So I'm Tyler Swanson, and I would be honored to have your vote, and I would be honored if you would go to my website, read some more about me. That's swansonforwake.com. Again, Swanson, F-O-R, wake.com. And remember, you may start voting early. You may request your absentee ballot beginning yesterday. You may also get your plan to early vote. It's coming up. We have roughly 59 days. Make your plan. Make sure your family members have a plan. Go to the polls, because Board of Ed is on the back of the ballot, and I am the last name on the back of the ballot for District 9. Thank you all so much.
I'd like to welcome everyone to stay and ask the candidates questions. The students do need to clean up the room though, because we only have this rental for a period of time. So if you don't mind, if you would come forward to ask any questions, just so the students can start their cleanup process. Thank you everyone for coming.